Shall we?
Sure. Why don't we start going then, Richard?
Good.
And as usual, we've got a lot to discuss today, so let's get on to it. And for our top news, Richard picked the inevitability of planetary doom has apparently been exaggerated. Technology, Jeff Bezos, Amazon's founder, is stepping down as CEO, and people are starting to think, now, why did that happen? Under materials, and we've talked about this before, but one day, apparently, your home could be made with mushrooms. And in ordinary flight, there's been a 66% drop in air passengers in the last year. Wow. And in environment, I suppose it's hopeful that General Motors is going to stop making diesel and gas vehicles by 2035. But Richard says, isn't that a way too slow? How about 2025 instead of 2035?
Yeah.
In biology, apparently the butterfly wing clap, whatever that means, explains the mystery of flight. And for us, what do we get when we give? Perhaps the best thing we can do, maybe for longevity and a peaceful life, is to figure out what we really have to give and then to give it. That maybe giving it is what makes us better. And on health, and I squirm when I say this, but could playing host to hookworms prevent aging? So that's what we'll talk about today. And so now, Richard, what's this top story that inevitable planetary doom has been exaggerated?
Well, I kind of hope that doom has been exaggerated. The subhead for this article was hope for the future is a reasonable and necessary prescription for change. And we know this has been a tough year. 2020 was a tough year in a lot of ways. And it seems besides the pandemic, there was an endless series of natural disasters and forest fires in the Western US and all of this stuff. And it sure made people concerned about the future in many ways. And but it turns out one of the things is that environmentalists are so good at emphasizing problems that sometimes these end up being overstated. And the article talks about two specific problems that I know I've heard about and I've worried about. And one of them is, of course, the sixth mass extinction that is, they say, happening now. And the other one is that there was a report that the population of wild animals has reduced by 60% in the last 40 or 50 years. And those are both staggering things. And it turns out that, at least the way they're expressed, neither one of them is true. And let's go through the details of it. This thing about the sixth mass extinction, they did a study of species on the planet, and they came up with 129,000. They obviously were not counting bacteria. And in the they studied, and since 1500, that is in the last 500 years, there have been extinctions, 902 of 130,000. So far the problem is not as bad as you think. And they went ahead and projected this in the future. And for it to get this bad as happened with the other mass extinctions, then in the next 100 years, what would happen would be that all the endangered species would have to be made extinct. And then in the next couple of 100 years, this rate of rapid extinction would just have to continue. So if things got worse than they've ever been and kept that way for a few 100 years, then we're going to lose a lot of species. But this assumes, by the way, that in the next few 100 years, we're not going to do anything about any of the problems, and we're not going to get any better at preserving biodiversity. And I think both of those can be challenged pretty well, those assumptions. So that's the background on the sixth mass extinction. The other one, the 60% reduction in wild animal populations. This one uh, was a study that was published that had a tremendous kind of statistical error. They're not, they did not measure the animal populations, because you would think if 60% were extinct, then there used to be, 100, now there's 40. But it's not like that. They did looked at extinctions of individual population, and then they came up with a number for that animal population, and then they averaged all of those numbers together so that in one case, for example, there was a species in Australia that had a 99.5% decline. So a terrible decline, but that was averaged in with the others, and that those kind of events drag the whole statistical population down because of the way it's calculated. And if you actually looked at these numbers more accurately, they say, yes, there has been a reduction in animal populations around the world in the last 50 years. It wasn't 60%, it was 3%. And so, that's not nearly the kind of crisis number that I thought was the case, because I read that survey. And when I read that survey, I said, oh my God. But instead of it being a 60% crash, it turns out if you do the numbers right, it was 3%. So, and we know, those of you who come here know that things are happening that are positive every week. And
Mhm.
none of those positive things are in any of these kind of reports. And one of the reasons these positive things are not in any of these reports is that most of them are these kind of nonlinear changes which you cannot predict until it starts to happen. And we're in this technological age, and in this technological age, these nonlinear change patterns are normal for many of the new things. So when you hear some of these doom and gloom stories, uh, hold on to your hope. Okay, the hope is what makes the right kind of positive action possible for the future.
So, any comments?
In other words, be a bit cynical, whatever you hear.
Well, we still have to clean our act up, and we still have to kind of
Oh, yeah.
reduce population, but that's all we could do. And if that solves the problem, okay. And if it doesn't, well, I don't know what else we can do.
Richard, I hope the report is right. I don't know. I'm still skeptical, a little bit skeptical about it, because at least when it comes to large mammals, for example, I was in Rwanda about 6-7 years ago to see mountain gorillas.
Yes.
And there's less than 1,000 mountain gorillas left on the planet.
Yes.
And in India, at the turn of the century in 1900, there were over 100,000 Bengal tigers. Today, there's less than 3,000 or so.
Yes.
So when you look at some of the large mammal populations, the declines are very, very scary.
Yes.
Now, it's possible.
Richard, do you recognize hands up? I put my hand up. Are you paying any attention to that, or do we just?
Sorry,
I
Loretta.
hadn't been paying any attention to that. I'm sorry, Loretta.
Yeah, sorry, Loretta. You want to go ahead?
No, I didn't. I thought you were finished.
Okay. No, okay. I didn't see any other hands, and that's the reason I started speaking. So anyway, I'm skeptical about the report to somewhat, but I guess a good science says you have to always be a bit of a skeptic. So I'll leave it at that.
And I was certainly skeptical as well, but one of the things that really affected me was just those gross numbers of 130,000 species on the planet and less than 1,000 having gone extinct in the last 500 years. You know, certainly, especially the large animal populations are one of the things that are the most at risk in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Loretta, please.
Okay. First of all, referring to the mass extinctions, there wasn't, probably wasn't air pollution. There were no cars. I mean, the only pollution probably was fires, things like that. I mean, it probably wasn't people related, which means that there wasn't any choice. It just happened. So maybe it'll happen again and we won't have any choice. Another thing is, Fred, I don't think you realized that when you were talking about hookworms, you said you squirmed. I thought that was a very good comment because they're very squirmy things.
Anyone else?
I said 60% of insects were extinct, but the amount of mammals was a lot lower, like 30 or 40%. But the thing is that there are so many species are endangered right now and only have, few of them left. Like VJ mentioned the tigers, and also I'd like to say that it's the same thing for elephants, although a lot of that has to do with people killing them. So I think your article made, when it says 3%, I don't think it's taking into consideration things that are almost extinct. Okay, I'm finished.
Anyone else? Apparently, the Amazon's founder, Jeff Bezos, is stepping down. People are speculating about it, but it apparently is happening. Anything on that, Richard?
Well, I have that in the technology story because in my mind, Jeff Bezos is a wonderful example of one of these technology guys. He was interested in math and science as a kid. He got a degree in engineering and computer science from Princeton. He started to work for some money companies and got the idea 40 years ago that he could do something on his own. And he uh, the internet was starting to be big, and he had the idea of doing something over the internet. He didn't know what it was. He did some research, and it looked like selling books was going to work over the internet. So he made Amazon and started off selling books over the Amazon, and his facility was in his garage. And I think that's in the best Silicon Valley traditions. Hewlett Packard was started in a garage, or one of the companies I worked for, Boschert, that invented one kind of, or popularized one kind of high-tech power supply, was started in his garage. So it's a very traditional thing. And this particular one, sometimes it's like the baseball batter at the bat. Sometimes he swings beautifully and pops out, and sometimes it just soars over the fence. And the company that Jeff Bezos started in his garage is worth I have to look because the numbers are so big that they don't store in my mind. It's something like $1.7 trillion is the worth of Amazon at the moment, and it's going up. And so Bezos, after 30 years, is retiring. And the guy he's going to give it to is the guy who's been with him almost from the beginning, who is running the web services part of Amazon. Netflix and things. You've heard of Netflix. Netflix, the reason why they're able to show these all-demand movies is Amazon services. Amazon services actually makes more money than Amazon's merchandising division. So anyway, so there's going to be a new president, and Bezos is going to maybe do some advanced product development, and he has his charities, and he has his Blue Origin spaceship company, and we'll see what he does. It's interesting. I think it's also interesting of the era that we're in, that uh, there are some of these basically computer guys that have become among the richest people in the world. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Tesla, Zuckerberg. These are all geeks who've made it big. And this is, I don't know if it's a story for all of us, but these are some of the guys who are the culture heroes in our current life. And
Any comments?
It's good to see scientists getting the supreme recognition rather than performers.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say that Amazon really is seen as a book or merchandising company, but it's the world's largest cloud computing company.
right, yes,
Yeah, and the other thing is, I have heard media reports that he wants to focus on Blue Origins because he's feeling pressure from Musk.
that's right.
Yeah,
I've
so
read
he's
the
gonna-
same reports.
Yeah, so once he retires or he becomes the chairman, he's going to focus on the space program.
Uh-huh. I think he's got to do some catching up with Musk, though.
That's right.
Any other
Yes.
thoughts? Well, then moving along on materials. Now, what is this, Richard? That one day your home could be made with mushrooms? Really?
That's right. Now, we've talked about this, and I've thought about renaming this as the mycology hour, but that didn't go. And anyway, it turns out building and building materials and construction in the world make up about 1/10 of the global carbon pollution. And this is actually more than the global transportation and air flight pollution combined. So the amount of pollution that comes in from building buildings is immense, and most of that's from making cement. And so they are looking and have been testing now for several years, making bricks out of mushrooms, and they often use as a base product some kind of waste material. And they have been able to establish that you can use their bricks the same as you can use concrete bricks. They have similar strengths and durability, and they're recyclable, and they don't mess up the CO2. You can do it also with insulation. Turns out mushrooms are good for insulation as well. And this is just one way in which we are learning to use what are thought of as non-traditional materials for to help us prosper and survive. So those non-traditional materials include mushrooms, algae, and bacteria. And I think when we're really civilized and know what we're doing, then all of those will be major sources for human production.
Any comments?
Well, I would like to know exactly what the properties are of these materials, because when they're alive, they keep growing.
Right. And they for these processes, then they grow them for like a week, and then they apply heat to stop them growing, because otherwise if they keep growing, they will consume the material like straw that helped to give them structural strength.
Yeah, right.
Other thoughts? Well, then moving along to flight. Apparently, about 66% less passengers in flight in the last year. A huge drop. What's that about?
I'm glad I don't have investments in the airlines business or the airplane business. That's what it's about. It's hard to imagine how bad the trouble has been for the airline around the world. Around the world, globally, the airlines suffered a combined loss of $370 billion last year. That's more than the GNP of most of the countries in the world. And the domestic flights lost about half of the business around the world, and international flights went down by 75%. And this is just one of the most dramatic of the economical effects of the virus. The Airline Association, they thought that they were going to recover about half of the loss this year, but that really was before these new COVID varieties started to show up. And I think that these new varieties are going to continue to slow air travel for the next number of months, maybe the next year. So these effects are broad in our economy, and who knows where we're going to be when the ball stops bouncing.
Any thoughts?
Yeah,
Yes, I have one.
go ahead.
Uh, I need that 35% of people are still flying because we've been told to stay in our houses and not travel. So I don't think this is surprising at all. And you know, unless people totally ignore and rules or suggestions, it's going to continue that way and until we're free to travel again. So this does not surprise me. It's affected not only the airlines, but the entire travel industry.
Yes, yes.
I know that I would be scared to fly because after all, you're in a small area having to breathe in recirculated air. Besides, I think that it is actually a good thing because not many people, I believe, realize that a jet airline puts in for every kilometer that it flies something like 53 pounds of pollutants. And so, I mean, that makes them one of the largest polluting entities in the world.
The other thing is that
There are 3 hands up. There are 3 hands up.
yeah,
We haven't been using hands before this, but we'll go ahead and try to respect a hand if it's there. I don't know who's next.
Johan was speaking.
Mary Ellen was next.
I just want to mention, that the European Common Market has banned travelers from United States. And as you know, there's a ban between travelers between Mexico and Canada, and I believe maybe to United States, and that must hit the airlines terribly hard. We had a reservation for going to Denmark end of April. We just were told that our trip over was canceled, not our trip back. So if we swim over and fly back, we'll be okay.
I read an article about, I think it was American Airlines, and how much they had, like cases and cases of wine that they were selling, and you could buy these cases of wine. But then I realized, well, all the bottles are only they really only have about 300 cases, but it was like they're selling their wine. So
No, actually, they do use full bottles in
Oh,
first
they do.
class
Okay.
and business
okay,
class.
okay. I don't know about that, but I would like to learn about it.
Okay, VJ.
Thanks, Loretta.
Yeah, very quick comment. The billions or hundreds of billions of dollars of handouts from the government, especially in the US, a large part of that went to the airlines in the early
Yes.
segments of the payment. And that's the only reason they're even in business today, because they were a critical infrastructure and the government didn't want them to completely fold up.
And I think it's that way around the world.
Yeah, but I think many other countries had less deep pockets. So I think the US has, since we are the global currency and we print money very easily, we've been more generous. The other thing is the cruise ship industry has been even more devastated than the airline industry. I just wanted to mention that.
Okay.
Many of them don't survive it.
Mhm.
Okay, then, moving along to energy. General Motors is going to stop making diesel and gas vehicles, they say, by 2035. And Richard suggests, well, that's a little bit okay, but how about 2025 instead? Hey, Richard, what's that?
Now, this, a lot of these stories, how you react depends on your point of view. And from one standpoint, in terms of the internal combustion engine manufacturers, GM is leading the field by this announcement. GM has announced they want to be carbon neutral by 2040. And to do that, then they're going to be, in terms of their manufacturing operations, carbon neutral by 2030 and around the world by 2035. But 3/4 of the pollution that General Motors creates is tailpipe pollution. And so they have made for them an enormous commitment. They're committing about $40 billion in research and development for new models and stuff like this. And they say by 2025, they're going to have 20 different models. Look at us. Look at how good we are. That is still, I think that they're going to be in a bad position in the market in the world, because I think they actually still, with all of this, are moving slower than the market is. And I think the market will want to be have these internal combustion engines banned by not later than about 2030. But GM is an enormous company, and they've got a long way to go. In the US last year, GM sold about 2.5 million vehicles, and out of the 2.5 million vehicles they sold, 20,000 were not polluting gas guzzlers. And that's just a tiny percentage. And basically, all they have to do to catch up to the future is just change everything. And at least they know that, and it looks like they're trying. Okay. So we'll.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I agree with Richard. It's kind of, it's not enough, because vehicles last for 10 years. And so if we got rid of the internal combustion engines by 2025, there would still be plenty of them running in 2035. And based on what we saw what we've seen in places like Cuba, with a bit of ingenuity, you can keep these engines running for 20 years.
Or 50 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we have to be a little more drastic and get a little more serious if we want to have an impact.
Also, one other detail about the GM announcement is they say this excludes medium-sized and large-sized trucks. They're still planning to keep those running on gas and diesel, even though that's a losing proposition, I believe.
Other thoughts?
Well, the price of fossil fuels need to be increased, and I understand that already it's like almost a break-even situation. So gas companies will probably be forced to do that anyhow. But if the prices increase, maybe through taxation or something, would force all these gas guzzling old vehicles off the road.
Okay, then moving on to biology. Now, what's this about butterflies' wings clapping, explaining how they fly?
Well, they have wondered for a long time just how they fly, because the butterflies' wings are these big clunky things, and it just did not make any sense in terms of what they knew about aerodynamics. but they've known about butterflies for about 50 years. Is butterflies have this motion where they have the wings and they clap them over their head. And they did a study of butterflies' flight in wind tunnels. And it seems like a funny thing to study, but they studied it, and now they understand. Together with this study, there was, very high speed photography and things like this, so you can see what happens. And what they discovered is on the up swing of the butterfly, the wings naturally curve a little bit and they cup air. And when they come together, the air whoosh, whooshes out the back. And it's the thing that lets butterflies take off fast and avoid predation. So the thing that makes the butterfly's flight go forward is that clasp and the air shooting out. And the thing that gives them the lift are the wings going down. So on the updraft, the butterflies create their jet, and on the downdraft, they create the lift. And this is a lot more efficient than they thought that butterflies could possibly be. And now, because this intrigues them so much, now they are trying to design this flight approach into small drones because they think butterfly flight might be more efficient than anything we're using today.
Haha. Any thoughts?
Sounds intriguing.
I wonder how.
Moving along to us. Apparently, what's really important for you, if you want to be really getting along, is to give. That the more you give, the better you get. What's that?
Oh, this is.
Where's your sound?
We can't hear you, Richard.
Okay, I'm sorry. I did something bad and now I fixed it. I'm really happy to talk about this story because this is something I believe in personally. So it turns out we benefit so much ourselves when we are kind to others. Uh, Kindness turns out to be a terrific happiness habit. And the studies that they have done show that kinder people actually live longer, healthier lives and have fewer aches and pains. And giving to others helps protect your overall health better than the daily aspirin we're supposed to take. And in fact, people 55 years and older, I think that includes us folks, who volunteer for organizations have an impressive 44% lower likelihood of dying. That's dying in any individual year. It's not dying altogether. So it's not going to make you immortal. And it turns out that this is a stronger effect than pretty much every other contributing factor that they can find for aging and health, including physical health, exercise, gender, and status. This is a stronger effect than exercising 4 times a week and is about as beneficial to your health as quitting smoking. And again, so they've found that kindness makes us happy, reduces symptoms of depression and anxiety. And experiments have actually demonstrated again and again that kindness actually causes us to improve our health and lengthens our lives. So I would end this asking, how about you? How do you or can you practice kindness in your life?
Any thoughts?
Well, we use the Unitarians who give us the money.
Well, we try to give money to the women standing outside Super Lake.
And I do that too, right? And I try to keep the money handy for a guy that jumps up near a stoplight, cleaning a
Okay.
windshield, same thing.
Okay. How about Mary Ellen?
I do a lot of volunteer work, and I agree with that. I think you gain so much from it. Now, it's also interesting that I'm being contacted by a lot of these seniors, and how are you doing and things like that. And I'm always sort of like, do you need any volunteers? Like, I'm not good at being at the receiving end too well, but it's a great concept. I agree.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, quick comments. This is in line with the latest breakthroughs in endocrinology as well, because our bodies generate good hormones and bad
Yes.
hormones.
Yes.
And stress and dangerous things that threaten us or anger and these kind of generate the bad hormones. And love and kindness and altruism and caring for animals and all that and good hormones have a positive effect on our physiology, and bad ones are relief attacks and stress and whatnot. So this is very much in line with generating good hormones. So it is kind of, in a handed way, self-centered by being good.
Yes. Yes. How about
Richard?
Clive?
Richard,
Yeah.
some of the research has also shown that the more people you know and are in frequent touch with, even if you're not always nice, but the more people you know, the longer you live. And so it's very important, they say, for you to know an awful lot of people, be in touch with a lot of them, and do some things synchronously, like in dance, where you're doing things in concert with other people. And I wonder how much.
You're breaking up, Fred, so we may not have heard you.
As well.
I think they're related. Like VJ was saying, the endocrine system likes all this.
I think this supports my belief that everything that we do in community is beneficial, except although extroverts live longer than introverts, not in the pandemic, because the introverts don't really notice that there's a pandemic going on, but and it's not just money, it's giving of your time.
Right.
And just somebody who asks for directions or kind of put yourself out there, invite people into your home, except in the pandemic. But it's all about human beings being designed to live in community.
Yes. I'll go to Johannes in a minute. I wanted to say first, I've got background in anthropology, one of the things that shows up, we have lived in small groups for 3 million years. And it doesn't surprise me that our whole body system has cooperates with the process of what we have to do to get along with each other. That means for 3 million years, we have lived with our mother-in-law. So we have to do something to get along.
Yeah.
Okay, Johannes,
That's Susanne.
Actually, I'm
Suzanne.
interested in applying this to on a broader perspective. And being married to a Dane, we keep hearing about how, the happiest countries in the world, Denmark, Norway, it seems like most of the
Uh-huh.
Scandinavian countries. So, because many of those we have being kind in the United States, necessary because financial in Denmark, the happiest in the world. So I'm interested in some follow-up studies, right?
Yes.
Well, something I want to say. First of all, Richard, for 3 million years, you're still looking pretty good.
Well, thanks. I don't look a day over 2.
Anyway, but in West Europe, as you know, I'm from Holland, and it's also in the Netherlands is also counted among the countries where people are the happiest. But I think that this is actually democracy in action, and for some time that people are like you said, Susie is a leap. People are being taken care of, and you have no problem if you need to go see a doctor. You go see a doctor. You don't have to first look at your pocketbook and see if you can afford it, because there's no money involved ever. And so it makes for a very calm in Holland about a year and a half ago now, and I noticed you don't see any beggars, nobody living on the street, and I know that this is true for Denmark, Norway, Sweden. I'm not so sure about, but anyway, I think this was just saying if we could Biden and his approach, and who followed him a chance, the United States can do the same thing.
Other thoughts? Well then, Richard, let's move on to the last queasy story about, would you like to play host to hookworms because you want to prevent yourself from getting old? Well, I'm not sure about this. What's that about?
Well, like you, when I read about this story, I'm interested personally in things that make me age better. And I was interested because of the headline, Preventing Aging, but having to have a hookworm infestation, I don't know. That may be a step too far. Uh, to me, I think this is a sign of the impact of the negative impact of the kind of cleanliness and sanitation that we have in the West. Parasitic worms have been around as long as there have been humans around, and it turns out until recent days, these parasitic worms were actually a part of our microbiome. They're a part of this symbiotic community that lives inside us and helps us live. And there are in this day, there are a lot of chronic conditions as we age that have at their root inflammation. And it turns out these hookworms, what they excrete, I guess it's hookworm poop, is good for curing this kind of inflammation. They call this inflammaging is the name of this inflammation as we age. And inflammaging is at the root of many of the diseases, heart disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, chronic pulmonary obstruction, stuff like that. These are all diseases of old people, and these are all look like they are conditions that are improved by hookworms. These are flukes, tapeworms, and nematodes. I would rather have a nematode than a tapeworm, I think. And they've started to do some testing, for example, on multiple sclerosis. And it turns out giving people with MS a hookworm infection helps their disease and the symptoms of their disease. Now, because of the ick factor, what they're trying to do is to figure out what proteins it is that the nematodes are excreting and figuring out how to turn that into a pill, because we like to buy pills and they like to sell pills, and they think that that will make better use of this protection. But I don't know, maybe we just need to get a nematode infection. Do you know where I can get nematodes? Anyone?
Any comments?
I haven't
That
had
would
any.
be the medicine made out of the worms, but not the worms themselves.
That's right. That's what they're trying. They think a lot of people are like you, Loretta. I am like you.
Yeah,
Okay, then
I would just
go
say
ahead,
that-
BJ.
I would just say that next time you're at a health food store, keep your eyes open for hookworm or tapeworm poop in bottles.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
I think,
I think I'll stick.
go
I
ahead,
think I'll
please.
stick to ibuprofen.
So thanks again, Richard. And before we sign off, I'd just once again like to ask, did anyone not receive the announcements of what was going on today, other than I think John DeWall and Jerry didn't initially get stuff. Was there anyone else who didn't get notification?
Well, I'll check with my friend Andrew Clarke in Alberta, because he didn't call in and he's pretty interested in this stuff. So he never called in today. So I'll just check with him privately
Okay.
whether he did get it or not.
Okay.
Okay, because I'll send out separate emails to those who I know didn't get them. Okay,
All right,
well,
thanks.
thanks again, Richard. And
Thank
we'll see
you.
you all next week.
See you
Thank
next week,
See you all.
folks.
Be
Good
safe.
show.
Be safe.
Thanks. Thanks,
Okay.
guys.
Bye-bye,
And
guys.
have your
Richard.
nematodes.
Yeah, all right.
Thanks, Fred.
And have your nematodes kindly, though.
Yeah.
No, I want
There's
to,
nothing
I want
like
to
a
help
good
the,
dose of hook
Yeah.
poop.
Yes, Mary
and I want to
Ellen,
help the airline industry. I want to help the airline industry.
by flying to
Oh.
Mexico. Okay. We want you to. Adios.
Adios.
Adios.